Welcome back to this tutorial series. In this episode, we'll finalise our prototype by including a goalkeeper for our goal. Then, we'll add in a win condition for the firework asset in the tutorial assets folder. There's plenty to do, so let's get to it. To start, let's right-click in the content browser, and then select Blueprint Class. From the new window, we can select an actor as our base class for our blueprint. We can then rename this to BP_goalkeeper. Once it's created, let's head into our new blueprint. If you end up with the same window as me, just click into the Open Full Blueprint Editor. Once we're in the full blueprint, let's head on over to the Viewport tab. From here, let's add in a cube to represent our goalkeeper. We can do this by clicking on Add in Components, and then searching for Cube. Now, as this is a goalkeeper, we need a way to move this cube from left to right. One thing we can do is add an Interp to Movement component. An Interp to Movement is a component in Unreal that smoothly moves an actor between specified points using interpolation. To do this, we can click on Add, and then search for Interp to Movement. With our component selected, we can then change the behavior type to ping pong. Once we've done this, let's head on over to the construction script at the top. A construction script allows us to procedurally generate components in real time using code. Unity users can think of this as being similar to an awake method, as it provides us with a way of modifying objects based on properties. Now, let's create references for the points that we want our keeper to travel to. To do this, we can click on the plus icon in the Variables tab. Let's rename this variable to StartPos. We can then change this variable's type by clicking on the drop-down and selecting Vector. We can then click the plus icon again to create a reference to our second location. We can then rename this to MPOS. Now, let's drag a reference for both of our variables and select Get. We can then create a control point by dragging out the pin from our vector and then searching for Make Interp Control Point. Now, make sure the node's selected and press Ctrl D to duplicate this. We can then feed our endpos into the vector pin. Now, let's drag out our pin from our control point and search for Make Array. To reference our other control point, we can click on the Add Pin on the Make Array. And now, we can feed in our other control point. Next, let's right-click in our graph and search for Set Control Point. We can now feed in our construction script execution pin. Once we've done this, we can drag a reference to our input to movement into the scene, and then select Get. We can then feed this into the target. Next, let's drag out our execution pin from our set control point and search for Set Duration. We can then feed our Interp to Movement into the target pin. As you can see, we can feed a float into this node to set the duration time. We can do this by clicking on the plus icon in Variables, and then setting the name to Duration. We can then change this to the type float. Let's then drag a reference to this into the scene and select Get. We can then connect the pin into the set node. Now, if we head over to the StartPos node that we created earlier, We can check the instance editable and show 3D widget variable to make these locations visible in the editor for us to use. We can then do the same for our end pos. If we then head over to our duration variable, we can then set the default value of this to 2. Let's now compile and save and head back into the editor. We can now drag our goalkeeper into the scene to set him up. If you look into the center of our goalkeeper, you'll see the control points that we've just created. We can then select and relocate them in front of our statues. And then if we click play, you'll see that our goalkeeper now moves from left to right. Awesome! Now, all that's left is our win condition. But first, we need to quickly fix the firework that we imported into our project. So let's head over to our tutorial assets folder, and then open the Niagara firework. As you can see in this viewport, our firework has some missing references, causing it to look black. We need to quickly reassign the particle that is also included in the downloaded folder. Let's head back to the tutorial assets folder and select the particle. From here, let's select the texture sample. In the details tab on the left, we can select the texture in the drop-down if we search for particle. We can then save this and return to our firework. In the particle nodes, you can see that the materials references are empty. If we click into these and head over to the selection tab, we can reference the particle material. We can then right-click and copy this material, and then paste it into the other nodes. If you look to the left, you'll see that our firework now works. Awesome! Now, let's just save this firework effect. We can then head over to our goal blueprint. In our goal blueprint, let's head over to the viewport. If you head to the content browser and find the firework, we can then reference this into the viewport. We can then reposition the firework to sit inside the statue to make it look like it's coming from it. We can then press Ctrl and D to duplicate this firework and reposition it onto the other side. To trigger this firework, we can create a function by clicking on the plus icon in the Functions tab. We can then call this Play Fireworks. If we pull out our execution pin, we can then search for Activate. Make sure to select one of the fireworks. If we click onto the Activate node, we can then press Ctrl and D to duplicate this. We can then sequence them together by connecting the execution pins. If we head into the Variables tab, we can then reference our other firework by dragging it into the editor, and then select Get. We can then connect the firework pin to the Activate node. To ensure that this firework doesn't activate the moment we click play, click into the firework component and uncheck Auto Activate. Make sure to do this for the second firework. We can now compile and save this blueprint. As this is our win condition, let's head over to the tutorial mode blueprint that we created in the first tutorial. If we pull out our execution pin and search for get, we can start to create a reference to our goal blueprint by selecting the Get All Actors of Class. We can then select the nodes drop-down and search for our goal blueprint. We can now start to reference the score variable from this blueprint by pulling out the array pin and searching for get. We can then pull out the pin from the get node and search for score. As we want to grab this variable, make sure to select get. We now want to check if the score is equal to a value that we've set so that we can play our effect. We can do this by dragging out the score pin, and in the new window, we can use the greater than or equal symbols to search for our node. In this new node, we can set our win amount by changing its value. For this tutorial, I'm going to set it to 2, but you can change this to any value you wish. Now that we have this statement set up, let's drag out our execution pin from our Get Actor node. We can then search for if to add a branch node. We can then feed in our previous statement to check if this is true. Now that we have our condition set up, let's create a new boolean to set to check if we've won. We can rename this boolean to win, and then reference this in the event graph by selecting get. From our branch node, we can pull out from our true pin, and then search for another branch node. We can then feed our win boolean into the condition pin. Let's drag out another reference to our win variable, and this time click set. As we want this to be false, we can leave the checkbox unticked. We can then feed our false execution node from our branch pin into set. Now, let's grab another reference to our goal by dragging out the execution pin and searching for Get All Actors of Class. In the Actor class dropdown, let's search for our goal. From here, we can drag out the pin from our out actors, and then search for get. We can then drag out our execution pin from our actors class, and search for our play firework. We can then feed our get node into our firework. Awesome! Now, make sure to compile and save, and we can return back to our editor. If we press play, and then score our second goal, you'll find that we'll now play the fireworks. Awesome! That's the end of this project for now. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial series.